Right, I do a video about Manny Pacquiao. By the way, Manny Pacquiao for me, he's my favourite fighter that I've seen. Right, it's difficult for me because Kawasaki's was always been my favourite fighter, but I just have to say Manny, the excitement, the style, what he's achieved. Anyway, should Manny Pacquiao fight next, and who should he fight, and stuff. So my personal opinion, right? This is hard for me to say, is I think Manny should retire, and I'll tell you why. Because what he's achieved is just unbelievable. I think he's achieved the most in any weight division, in any era. Eight-time world champion, and the way he's done it, I shouldn't even need to go into it. You guys and girls are smart enough. I'm sure you know your boxing, but fighting Crawford or fighting Spence at this point, I think it's crazy. I think it's too risky, and I'll tell you why. Manny's 42 now, maybe, is he 42? I think he's 42 years of age, right? Obviously Errol Spence and Crawford, they're in their early 30s. They're in their prime now, and they're still peaking, right? Errol Spence coming back from the car crash, beating Danny Garcia, looked brilliant. Terence Crawford beating Kell Brook, and just the way, and beating Khan before that, and fighting somebody else and beating what's the guy, the Australian guy. My brain's not working, so I've got to get my food in. Jeff Horn. Just seeing how prime they are, and the fact that every fight Errol Spence has, he's getting better and better and better. And the same for Crawford, right? I think those two should fight, right? That's the fight that everyone wants to see. I'll do my prediction on that fight. But Manny Pacquiao now, right? I'll be honest with you. When he fought Thurman, I thought he would win, right? But I knew it was dangerous, right? And we've got to look at, because Thurman's been a brilliant fighter, right? That performance that Manny put on, that was the old Manny, right? That was the old Manny in the older body. He rolled back the years, because the Manny that fought Jeff Horn, even though I think Manny got robbed, I think he definitely won that fight. I don't know what happened with that. But he did take a lot of punches, right? He didn't look his best. But the Manny that showed up for Thurman was electric. Even the look in his eyes. I just want to say, right, I'm grateful for some of these nights of boxing. That fight was absolutely brilliant. The atmosphere, the way Manny fought, it was just Thurman fought a great fight. He's tough as anything, and the knockdown, I just thought Manny looked unbelievable. On that night, I was like, yeah, he can beat Spence. He'll beat all of them. When I saw the way he was performing that night against Thurman, especially if you look at some of the rounds where you could see shades of the old Manny, the Manny that beat Cotto, the Manny that beat Margarito, the Manny that beat Hatton, just that relentless, aggressive, fast, just lightning hands, power, relentlessness. But having digested the fight more, he did take a lot of shots in that fight from Thurman. He did take a lot, and Manny's got such a chin, right? I don't think that gets spoken about enough. Not just a great, aggressive combination, boxer / fighter. He's brilliant. But having said that, that fight was last year. 1 year out the ring, or 1 year in boxing, is like 10 years when you're at the age Manny's at, or for any fighter. It's a long time. And Errol Spence and Crawford have been fighting recently. So I think Manny going into that, this breaks my heart to say this, because I've never gone against Manny. He's my favourite fighter of all time. I love Manny Pacquiao. Oh, sorry, only when he fought Hatton, right? Tell a lie, I must tell the truth. Of course, I was a massive Hatton fan. I wanted Hatton to win. But other than Hatton, every fight Manny's gone into, I've wanted him to win, right? But I just think it's dangerous. I think this is the time when great legends go too far and they end up getting beaten. They get old overnight. And I could see that happening if he fights Crawford or Spence. I just think they're too young. They're too fresh. But I'm going to contradict myself for a second, right? I have to say this. I do still think Manny could beat both of them right now. But I think it's unlikely. Because I think the Manny that beat Thurman, I'm not 100% sure that Errol Spence could beat that Manny, right? But again, the fact that I'm not 100%, is not great, because usually I'm 100% Manny's going to win in every fight that he's fought. And can he pull that out again at his age? You know, even though we have to take into consideration he's not your average 42-year-old, right? I mean, that's obvious, right? He's fit as anything, right? He's fitter than most boxers that are 20, 30. But we're talking Errol Spence, we're talking Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford. These guys these are special fighters, right? And they're still peaking. So I think it wouldn't be good if he goes into that fight and he loses. It's just not good for his career. I don't want to remember Manny getting beaten up or even losing on points, and he's got nothing to prove. I think retiring now off that Keith Thurman fight and what he's achieved makes him, he's already a great, even if he gets beaten and knocked out, if he got knocked out by Bud Crawford or Errol Spence Jr, which I don't think he would, but let's say worst case scenario he got knocked out, he's still going to go down, he's still going down as not just a Hall of Famer, one of the greatest fighters who ever lived. And that's just based on achievement. That's not even looking at his boxing ability, his what he does in the ring, his skill, his talent, just based off achievement alone. But I still think it does tarnish it a bit. It's not a nice thing to happen, and it happened to. It wasn't nice seeing, Sugar Ray Leonard losing some of the fights that he lost, that he would never have lost in his prime, when he got beaten by Hector Camacho. When he went up to super middleweight, it wasn't really his weight, and it's just not nice. And seeing, even seeing De La Hoya when Manny beat De La Hoya. It just wasn't nice seeing a great fighter kind of get old overnight and just take such a beating. I don't want to see that happen to Manny, right? And I just think it's not worth the risk. But of course, if it happens, I'm going to watch it. But I'd still back Manny to beat him, but I wouldn't be confident. I'd have to say that I think Terence Crawford would edge it. He's just going to be too young, too much momentum, and he'll win on points. And I think the same for Errol. Errol's just so big and strong. Even though again, Manny's beaten giants, but it's just, will he be able to pull it out? Even from last year, can he be as good as he was against Thurman? That was over a year ago. I don't know. I'm not confident. And I think he now, at this stage of Manny's career, he only has like one fight a year and a half. It's too long out. Manny's a momentum fighter, like what Canelo's doing at the moment. When he's in his prime and destroying people, he's got to be fighting more regularly, and he's not been fighting regularly enough. So I don't think he should take the fight. I don't think it's a good fight. But maybe a lot of people will disagree with me, right? And I do think he'll lose if he fights Crawford. Personally, I think Crawford is better than Errol Spence. It's so tough, right? And it's funny because I'm more of an Errol Spence fan. I'd like to see Errol Spence beat Crawford, but I just think Crawford it's just I can't explain it fully. There's just something better. He just looks more harder to beat. But that would be a 50-50 fight, and that's a fight I want to see. I want to see Crawford fight Spence, not Manny fighting at his age now. I don't think he's got anything to prove. I think it's kind of criminal in boxing that they allow some of these fights just for the money and stuff like that. And I don't think Manny needs this fight now. I think he should just call it a day and retire. He's a legend. He's one of the best fighters ever in any era. He's unbelievable what he's achieved. So having those fights is too risky for me personally. They're great fights for the others. Of course Errol Spence is going to want to fight, and that's brilliant to have on your resume, and Crawford. So for them it's brilliant fights, because they're getting Manny when he's completely at the end of his career. He's not in his prime anymore. Even though he's pulling things back, there's certain flashbacks in the Thurman fight. If you really look at it carefully, he's not as good as he was. He gets hit more now than he used to. Even though he's fit as anything, he's not as fit as he used to be in the ring. And it's hard to say it, but it's the truth. The fitness he had when he fought Margarito was like a machine gun. 10 punch combinations. He couldn't beat him. He was unbeatable. That, personally, I don't think Crawford and Errol Spence ever beat the prime Manny. That's my opinion. I don't think anyone does, right? When he was in his prime, at his peak, the Cotto performance, Margarito, the peak of his prime, I don't think those guys could have handled him. He's just too much, too relentless, too much pressure, too much speed, too much angles, too strong, too powerful. I think he would have stopped both of them fighters, Errol Spence and Crawford. But the reality is he's not in his prime anymore, and they are in their prime. So I think he should just retire personally, because he could get hurt, he could get knocked out, he could just age overnight and just be a shell of himself, and it would be horrible to see him get beaten up. Such a great legend. It'd be heartbreaking for me being such a fan. So that's my opinion on it. But you know, I would of course I'd watch the fight. So that's my opinion. Now, in terms of how the fight would go, if it was to happen, I'll have to do that in another fight and give it some thought, right? But I'm not sure. That's a difficult one, because they've all got such great styles. Manny, Errol, and Crawford, they've all got individually such brilliant boxing styles. They can all box, they can all fight. They've all got a good jab. You know, they're all good defensively. They're all fit. They're all strong. So great styles. But yeah, I think it's asking too much. I think sometimes as fans and we expect too much. Manny's already gone. He shouldn't even really have fought Thurman. He should have retired. He should have retired a long time ago. But he still went on and beat Broner, and beating these young. It's amazing. He's in his 40s, beating 30-year-olds and great fighters, and beating Thurman. Thurman was one of the best welterweights. I know he had some time out, and you know he struggled with the Jose Cito Lopez fight. He still won it, but you've got to give Thurman credit, right? He really did give a good fight to Manny. He did claw back. He did make the fight closer than it was. I probably gave that fight 7-5 to Manny, 7 rounds to 5 rounds. Thurman was coming back in the later stages, really hurting Manny, hitting him some big shots, but he just couldn't put it off. So, you know, you can't knock Thurman, but yeah, I think Manny should call it a day. I think he shouldn't go on. Anyway, alright, I'll see you in the next video.